I had always believed that no matter what, my son and I shared an unshakable bond. As a single mother raising a teenage boy, I knew there would be awkward moments, arguments, and days when he didn't want to talk to me at all, but I never imagined I'd stumble into a situation that would force both of us to grow in ways we weren't expecting. That day started like any other, but it ended with a lesson I'll carry with me forever. It was late on a Thursday afternoon when I decided to leave work early. My boss had noticed how exhausted I'd been lately and insisted I take a break. The sun was still bright in the sky as I drove home through our quiet suburban neighborhood. I had stopped at the grocery store to pick up a few things for dinner: pasta, salad mix, and my son's favorite chocolate chip cookies. As I balanced the bags in my arms and pushed the front door open, I didn't think much about what might be waiting inside. The house was unusually quiet. Normally, by that hour, I'd hear the hum of the TV in the living room or the muffled sound of music coming from upstairs. But that day, the silence was heavy. I set the grocery bags down on the counter and called out, "Ryan? I'm home." No answer. I frowned but smiled to myself. Maybe he was just upstairs with his headphones on again. I unpacked the groceries and headed down the hallway toward his room. When I reached the door, it was slightly open, and I could hear the faint sound of movement inside. I knocked gently, but when I pushed the door open, I caught him completely off guard. Ryan jumped in his seat, spinning around quickly in his desk chair. His face turned crimson red and he stammered, "Mom, you're home early." His hands moved clumsily to close a notebook on his desk. The whole scene felt charged with embarrassment, and for a split second, neither of us knew what to say. I froze at the door, not wanting to make him feel more awkward than he already did. I didn't mean to barge in. I just wanted to see how you were doing," I said softly. He avoided my eyes and muttered, "I was just studying. That's all." His voice cracked a little, betraying how nervous he was. I knew right then it wasn't really about what he was doing, it was about the fact that he was a teenage boy, caught off guard by his mother at the wrong moment. I remembered being his age, how privacy felt like the most precious thing in the world, and how humiliating it could be to feel like someone had invaded it. So instead of pushing, I smiled gently and said, "Okay, well, I'll let you finish up. Dinner will be ready in an hour." I closed the door softly behind me and leaned against the hallway wall, exhaling slowly. It was awkward for me too, but I knew this was one of those moments where a parent has to decide whether to scold, ignore, or carefully open the door to a bigger conversation. That evening, I set the table and called him down for dinner. He shuffled into the kitchen, still red-faced, his hair a little messy, and he avoided looking at me directly. We ate in silence at first, the clinking of forks and knives filling the space. Finally, I decided to break the ice. "You know," I said gently, "when I was your age, I remember how important it was to have my own space. I also remember how awkward it felt when my parents didn't really understand that." Ryan paused mid-bite, looked up at me cautiously, and then put his fork down. "You're not mad at me?" he asked hesitantly. I shook my head.
"No, sweetheart."
"I'm not mad. I want you to know that you don't have to hide from me. You're growing up, and I know sometimes it feels confusing or even embarrassing, but that's all a part of life." He let out a sigh of relief and leaned back in his chair. "I thought you were going to freak out." I chuckled softly. "Believe me, I've seen worse. But I do want us to talk about things when they bother you. I don't want you to ever feel like you have to shut me out completely." That conversation opened the door for Ryan to share more with me. Slowly, over the course of that dinner and many evenings afterward, he began to confide in me about the pressures he felt, school stress, friends who didn't always treat him kindly, and his own worries about not fitting in. That moment I walked into his room had embarrassed him deeply, but it also made him realize that I was still someone he could talk to without judgment. The following weeks became a turning point for us. We made a habit of taking walks together after dinner, where he would tell me about his day, and sometimes I would share stories from my own teenage years. I told him about the time I got caught sneaking out to a school dance, about the heartbreaks and friendships I had, and how lost I sometimes felt. He laughed at my stories, and in his laughter, I saw him relax. The more he opened up, the more I understood how hard it was for him to balance being a teenager with the expectations of school, friends, and family. And the more I listened, the more I realized how important it was for me not just to be his mother, but to also be his safe space. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Ryan turned to me and said, "Mom, I was so scared that day you walked in. Not because I was doing something wrong, but because I thought you'd think less of me." My heart ached at his words. I placed my hand on his and said, "Nothing you could ever do will make me think less of you. You're my son. I'll always love you, even in the most awkward, confusing moments of your life. Especially then." His eyes glistened, and though he didn't say much, I knew those words mattered more than anything else. Life didn't magically become perfect after that, but our relationship grew stronger. We learned to laugh through the awkwardness, to be honest even when it was uncomfortable, and to respect each other's need for space. The day I caught him in that awkward situation turned out to be a blessing in disguise. It reminded me that being a parent isn't about controlling every detail of your child's life, but about guiding them, respecting them, and loving them unconditionally. And for Ryan, it reminded him that no matter how embarrassed or misunderstood he felt, his mother would always be there to catch him, not in a moment of judgment, but in a moment of love.